Hello everybody. Imagine fasting without knowing when the sun will set. In a country where daylight lingers for 24 hours, the call to Maghrib prayer never comes. This is the reality faced by Muslims in northern Norway, a place where the sun can hover on the horizon for weeks without dipping below it. Norway, a nation that gently embraces the Arctic Circle, offers natural beauty that borders on the surreal, fjords slicing through rugged mountains, crystal-clear lakes, and summer skies that never darken. But behind this breathtaking scenery lies a spiritual journey no less extraordinary: how thousands of Muslims observe fasting and prayer in a land without night. Take Troms, for instance. Here, Ramadan becomes a unique test of faith. When the holy month falls during summer, the sun never truly disappears. In such extreme conditions, how do you determine when to begin and break your fast? The answer isn't found in the sky, but in scholarly judgment and wisdom. Local and international scholars offer several options: follow the schedule of the nearest Muslim-majority city like Istanbul, use Mecca's timing, or adopt an average of day and night from another season. Norwegian Muslims make their choices wisely, preserving the spirit of fasting without forsaking reason. It's not just about time, but about intention and steadfastness, says Hassan Mahmoud, an imam in Oslo. We've learned that sunlight doesn't define day and night, faith does. One striking thing about Norwegian cities is how mosques have become more than just places of worship, they're beacons of community. In sleepless summers, the mosques remain vibrant, the Quran is recited aloud, children practice tajweed, and kitchens bustle with preparations for communal iftar meals. These aren't just routine activities. They are expressions of cultural and spiritual resilience. In the midst of temporal disorientation, Norwegian Muslims don't lose their direction, they create their own light. Interestingly, not all Muslims in Norway experience endless daylight. In the south, in places like Oslo and Bergen, night still arrives, albeit for just a few hours. But the experience of living as a Muslim in a land of four seasons remains unique, a spiritual journey that demands deeper thought, greater flexibility, and stronger unity. Islam in Norway is not merely about rituals, it's about courage. The courage to worship under skies that offer no markers of time. The courage to bow down on foreign soil. And the courage to shine in a land that's always bright. In 2014, the world was stunned by a quiet yet profound revelation: millions of people embraced Islam, and Norway, a country long regarded as secular and culturally homogeneous, found itself unexpectedly part of this spiritual awakening. Across Norwegian cities, from the bustling streets of Oslo to the remote stillness of Troms, new faces began appearing in mosques. They weren't immigrants. They weren't tourists. They were native Norwegians, born into Lutheran families, raised with Western ideals, and now confidently uttering the Shahada. There were no mass gatherings. No screaming headlines. But in quiet corners of libraries, coffee shops, and even Norway's tranquil forests, the search for meaning found a new destination. I wasn't looking for religion. I was searching for peace, shared Erik Solheim, a former philosophy teacher who embraced Islam at the age of 42. And just when I stopped consciously seeking God, I found him in Islam. In verses of the Quran that felt like they were speaking directly to me. Erik was not alone. Reports from Islamic communities documented a steady increase in conversions throughout the early 2010s. By 2014, this wave had reached its peak. Imams admitted they were overwhelmed by the number of people coming to declare their faith. There's no single answer. Some were drawn to Islam's structured legal system. Others were captivated by the concept of Tawhid, a direct, unmediated relationship between the individual and God. Many were inspired by the resilience of Muslims in the face of adversity, especially as Islam was often misunderstood or misrepresented in mainstream media. Interestingly, most converts didn't find Islam through direct preaching. They found it through reading. Books, discussion forums, and often a copy of the Quran discovered on a dusty second-hand bookstore shelf. Amid Norway's long, silent winters, they read. They reflected. And eventually, they bowed. Becoming a Muslim in Norway is not without its challenges. Beyond learning new rituals and religious practices, many converts must navigate family and social circles that don't always accept their choice. Yet, like snow, harsh but purifying, the path to Islam in Norway has forged resilient hearts. They chose to bow, even when no one else was watching. They chose Islam, even when it meant losing a measure of social comfort. And from these deeply personal decisions, a slow but undeniable wave of revival began reshaping the face of Islam in Norway, not as a foreign religion, but as a consciously chosen way of life, embraced with love, conviction, and quiet courage. Behind the beautiful growth of Islam in Norway lies a darker reality that cannot be ignored. As the call to prayer began echoing through the streets of Oslo, some ears closed themselves. As mosques filled with new faces, some eyes looked on with suspicion. Islam was growing, but so was a shadow of fear. Islamophobia crept silently, slipping into the media, political arenas, and even dinner-table conversations across Norwegian homes. Not all hatred screams. Much of it whispers. A cold stare on the train. A mother pulling her child closer upon seeing a woman in hijab. A graffiti scrawl on a mosque wall, "Go home." And perhaps the most heartbreaking memory was the terrorist attack carried out by Anders Behring Breivik in 2011. Though he was not Muslim, the tragedy left a deep national trauma and, ironically, deepened public suspicion toward the Muslim community. Once again, Islam became the scapegoat in public discourse. Yet, in the face of such pressure, Norway's Muslim communities chose a surprising response, not vengeance, but dialogue. Not anger, but compassion. When criticism came, they opened their doors. Mosques across Norway began hosting open mosque days, invitations for anyone to step inside, ask questions, observe prayers, and even taste the food served during iftar. Schoolchildren were welcomed in, learning about Islam not through headlines, but through human interaction. Young imams mastered the Norwegian language and stood side by side with pastors and rabbis in interfaith forums. Muslim communities raised funds for victims of local disasters, participated in anti-extremism campaigns, and worked as contributors, not just bystanders, in shaping social change. One of the most moving moments came in 2015, when a group of young Muslims formed a human ring, a peace shield, around a Jewish synagogue in Oslo as a symbol of interfaith solidarity. The world paused. Norway saw that Islam was not just a private faith, but a way of life rooted in love for fellow human beings. Slowly, Norwegian society began to change. As people came to know Muslims not just as headlines, but as co-workers, neighbors, their children's teachers, perceptions began to soften. Today, Islamophobia hasn't disappeared. But it's no longer unchallenged. It's being questioned. It's being resisted, not just by Muslims, but by Norwegians themselves. Because tolerance here is not just a slogan, it's something fought for, one small step and one honest conversation at a time. In a land where the sky sometimes knows no night, Muslims in Norway are gradually finding their place. No longer just guests, no longer a tolerated minority, but an integral part of the nation's broader story. Where once there were only one or two mosques, now there are dozens. Where congregations once gathered in basement rooms, Norwegian Muslims now have a voice, heard in parliament, in universities, in the media, even in arts and culture. The children of Muslim immigrants are now growing up as true Norwegians. They speak Norwegian more fluently than their parents' native tongues. They love the fjords, ski through the snow, watch Scandinavian films, but they also fast in winter, recite the Quran, and gather for Friday prayers with their community. The struggle between identities is fading. "I don't have to choose between being Muslim or being Norwegian," says Sarah Ali, a medical student in Bergen. "I am both. I'm part of this country's future." Indeed, more and more Norwegian Muslims are stepping into influential roles: doctors, entrepreneurs, environmental activists, even politicians. They bring Islamic values, honesty, social responsibility, compassion, into the public sphere, not to change Norway, but to enrich it. Mosques in Norway are no longer just prayer spaces. They have become the hearts of communities. Inside, you'll find Norwegian language classes for newcomers, job training workshops, family counseling, even winter aid programs for the poor, both Muslim and non-Muslim. Islam teaches us to be a mercy to all of creation. So we start with those around us, says Imam Khalid, who leads a mosque in Oslo. We want our neighbors to feel that this mosque belongs to them too, even if they never bow down in prayer inside it. Of course, the journey is far from over. There are still challenges, subtle discrimination, media stereotypes, and the daily effort to keep faith alive in a secular society. But Muslims in Norway no longer walk in the shadows. They stand in the light, and sometimes, they are the light. While much of the world looks at Europe with concern, at extremism, division, and fear, Norway offers a quiet hope that Islam can grow in peace within a Western society. That a Muslim can be not just a good citizen, but a leader. That faith and openness can walk side by side, without cancelling each other out. And perhaps, it is precisely because the Norwegian sky never truly goes dark, that Islam here has learned to become its own light.